Welcome everybody to this episode of the Worcester Real Estate Podcast. Today I'm really excited to be joined by Peter Dunn. He is the Assistant Chief Development Officer for the City of Worcester. So Peter, welcome to KNS and welcome to the Worcester Real Estate Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming. I definitely wanted to pick your brain on a lot because obviously Worcester has a ton going on and a lot of that is a result of you and everyone in your office. So before I get into all that, I'm just curious to hear your background, how you got interested in city planning and city development. So I understand you grew up in the city. How'd you end up working in City Hall?
So thanks, yeah. And I grew up in Holden, so just down the road off of Salisbury Street. And then so I went to Wachusett High School, and then did my undergraduate degree at Roger Williams University in Rhode Island. Studied economics, management, and Spanish there. Then once graduating, came back home. Worked for Hanover Insurance for a year, so that's a common theme when you have college students returning home. They look at some of the largest employers, some of the reputable companies in the area. So I spent a year there. And when I was in college, actually, I did internships with the WBDC and the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. So that sort of got me exposed to the whole economic development world here in the city. Really enjoyed that time with both of those organizations, and after about a year at Hanover Insurance, there was a job that popped up in the Economic Development Office, so I applied and been there for about 7 years now.
You kind of came in to work for the city sort of right when things were starting to take off. I think people were talking about things taking off. In the last 7 years, obviously the city has been on this incredible trajectory, probably above and beyond people's wildest expectations. So it's just exciting to see. I grew up in Millbury, and when I was a kid, you kind of only came to Worcester for like the Ice Cats.
Sure.
Other than that, there really wasn't a lot for families to do. There really wasn't, especially downtown, there wasn't a lot for to do. It was a total different fabric, and one of the things we talk about a lot on the podcast, and especially in our office, is it just feels like we're finally realizing our fullest potential as a city, as a region, and so that's really exciting. For sure. So you went to school down in Rhode Island. So you've experienced other states, other cities.
Sure.
What do you think? Why is Worcester so unique with our opportunity these days?
I think right now, certainly having the economy rebound in the way it did. I started with the city in 2013, so we were starting to climb out of the recession. So that's obviously positive in terms of people looking to invest dollars and looking to start businesses, and so that kind of fueled a lot of the organic kind of macro kind of trends that we were seeing. But Worcester specifically, especially when you compare it to maybe some of the other gateway cities in Massachusetts, like Lowell or New Bedford or Fall River, Springfield, Worcester has such a concentration of colleges and universities. That's a really huge asset, and I think really helpful too when you see, the macroeconomy is cyclical, so you're going to have recessions, and so I think we fared pretty well through the last one because of the eds and meds, that economic base that we have. People are still getting sick, people still need health care, people often go back to school when the economy's not doing great. So I think, that core of the hospitals, universities, the healthcare system here, as well as, the colleges and universities and the educational sector really fuels a lot of what we're doing. Yeah,
we're very fortunate in that regard. Obviously, education's always been huge in the area. The healthcare industry's been huge in the area, but I think now you're finally starting to see the net benefits that having those being sort of some of the pillars of the region. And I know in the past, at least it always seemed to be, there was sort of this brain drain. We have great colleges and universities here, but then if they weren't coming back to Hanover Insurance, they were going elsewhere. I think it seems now that trend is sort of reversing, and young people want to be in the city.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that. It's tough to pinpoint the data from time to time, but whether it's I know the Research Bureau has done some work in this area trying to look at college student retention rates, and we've been engaged with the colleges and universities for sure throughout their time, and HECMA is a good organization for that, the Higher Education Consortium of Central Mass. So actually early on in my time with the city, we had also done a survey of most of the colleges and universities, as many of the students that we could get to take that survey of their perception of downtown, what did they like, what did they think was missing, and that sort of helped kind of influence the different recruitment strategies of different businesses or entertainment options and things like that in the into downtown. So that was really helpful, and again, I think we're starting to see more college students stay in the city,
Yeah.
which is really nice.
Yeah, and we have, I know right around the corner from here is 145 Front Street, the brand new apartment building, and that filled up in no time. A young colleague of ours here, him and his girlfriend moved in. Typical sort of young couple story. It's perfect for them, it's convenient, there's a lot to walk to, it's easy for a commuter. So it's great to see that Worcester's being almost a first choice for young professionals. And that, at least for me, is one of the things I get most excited about when thinking about our potential. And you have that, you have the sort of the rock beds of the universities you mentioned, and the healthcare companies here. But then we also have, of course, the exciting new ballpark. And I know you and your office have been heavily involved in getting that off the ground. But it wasn't a slam dunk, as I would assume. And I know there were at times skeptics. I know, at least I heard, you might have as well, that the skeptics said, well, they did the same thing in Hartford, and it's sort of a real question still if that was a net benefit. What makes Worcester different? Why is the ballpark as transcendental as we think it will be?
Well, I think there's definitely a lot to unpack there,
Yeah.
but and the mayor actually said it in his inaugural address too, that the ballpark, where it's a great kind of symbolic project of where Worcester is and where we can be. It doesn't define the city, and it really doesn't even
Right.
define economic development right now with
Right.
all the other stuff that's happening. But it is a really big win for the city, and when you look at them evaluating a couple dozen other cities of where that could be located, having them select Worcester, I think, is a testament to all the great work that's been going on. And when you think about what else could be there, if you remember a few years prior, there was a slot parlor casino that was looking there, and obviously that's been those have been popping up in a lot of cities, and many of them have been underperforming. So I think having something a little different and kind of using that same silver bullet that maybe some of these other communities were looking for is a positive. And also putting something there that's going to be family fun, entertainment is a win for the rest of the city. Not everybody can participate in casinos or want to participate in casinos.
Yes.
So having something that produces good family fun, I think, is another asset to that. And when you think about kind of, I guess, what is different from the project compared to maybe some of these other cities that have explored this option of stadiums, sports arenas, things like that, what differentiates Worcester's proposal was that the private development was an interdependent part of the entire agreement. So a lot of times what you see in some cities is they feel like if they build this, then the rest of the economic development will follow, and that there will be this economic spin-off yet to be determined. And what you see in some of these other cities is that doesn't always come to fruition. And so it was important from the beginning that we knew that private investment in that development was committed from the beginning, because then we can actually project what the taxes might look like.
Yes, that was huge.
Coming from that development to help support the debt service, obviously, for the construction of the stadium itself.
And that I think is part of what makes us a little unique as a city. When you hear either it's the mayor, the city manager, other folks from City Hall, and the business community, you hear often the phrase public-private partnerships. And I think that's a key. In economic development, this just doesn't happen. It's something you have to work at. You can't press a button and you have economic development.
Right.
But if it's not just this movie of the future where you just sit back and eat popcorn and just watch economic development happen, you know this better than me. It takes a concerted effort.
Right.
And I think just from my observation, what the city does in partnership with the private sector is sort of the magic that makes everything work.
Yeah, and I think actually going back to see what we're experiencing now, a lot of the foundation and the building blocks have been laid down many years even before the recession happened too. So whether it's City Square or looking at Gateway Park over near WPI, or some of these other biotech park being done in the 70s, 80s across from the medical school, a lot of the kind of foundations were laid to see the growth that we're seeing happening now. But to your point, I think one thing that has been really important has been the collaboration that exists between not only the public and private sector, but also among the different levels of public that we do have. So whether it's the city government working with the administration and the city council, but also our state delegation and the state administration, as well, all the way up to the federal government. And our Congressman Jim McGovern has had his fingerprints on a lot of the projects that you see around securing federal resources, state resources. And I think that's where the city plays an important role, is the necessary public investment that sometimes paves the way for private investment.
Yeah.
So whether it's securing different grants from EPA for brownfields redevelopment, or the money that we get from the Department of Housing and Urban Development for some of the affordable housing or other infrastructure and other public facilities that get built. And then state, the Mass Works grant has been really critical for the infrastructure needs of the city. Mass Development, a key kind of state counterpart in the development world, doing all sorts of creative financing solutions. So I think having all of those kind of levels of government working together, and then bringing in the private sector as well, and kind of all working together to kind of move the ball forward, I think has been really successful.
Yeah, to your earlier point, the city is growing and realizing its potential despite the ballpark.
Right.
And the ballpark is great.
Right.
But the city was moving in this great direction even before people even started wondering, or there were even rumors that the team could be relocating from Pawtucket. So that was really exciting. And we had Craig Blaze on. He mentioned the same thing. This wasn't 1 year and all of a sudden Worcester is amazing. It took a few decades to get us to this point. What do you think when we're trying to grow the city's economic sort of output and hopefully grow the standard of living for the greater Worcester area? Do you think it's inevitable you come across trade-offs, or is there a way to make sure all stakeholders within the city's fabric, that all their lives are improving? Is that something you and your office should think about?
I think so. We do think about that often, and that's what's interesting about economic development, is that while sometimes we get focused on like a project-based approach, we really intersect with a lot of the other needs of the community too. So whether it's just quality of life issues, recreational amenities, public education, of course, public safety, and all the other services that people come to expect from the city. One thing that fuels all of that is the tax base. And so really a core kind of objective of economic development is to create jobs and expand the tax base.
Yes.
So I think as we start to actually grow the pie, instead of looking at it from a zero-sum game, if you spend some here, you're not spending it there, the more we can actually grow the pie, the more we can do all of those important things. And so that's what's kind of important about economic development, is that it can also drive a lot of those other investments that are necessary.
Those decisions and how you allocate resources, it's easier when you have growth, right? Growth is probably the easiest answer. Sometimes maybe the hardest solution, but and you see that in big cities. You see that in small towns. I'm heavily involved in the town of Millbury. We focus a lot on, we can't do the things the city can do as far as economic development, but there are things we can do to grow the tax base. And the question is, like, how much of the city's fabric and culture are you looking to change? And I think what's impressive about Worcester is it still feels like Worcester. Right. And I think that in and of itself is really important for how the community embraces all these changes.
Yeah, I think, a lot of it too, it's not, I wouldn't say changing the culture. We actually, I think, look for ways to highlight the great things about kind of the history of Worcester, whether it's, the Main Street Reimagined project. Some of the public art elements will be a testament to kind of Worcester's history and kind of telling that story as well.
Yes.
And I think we've had a particular focus on the role of arts and culture as well in economic development. And so we have an entire cultural development division. The cultural development officer reports right up to the city manager. And so supporting some of those initiatives and allowing that scene to thrive, I think, is really important when you think of quality of life and whether the city's kind of an interesting, cool place to be. And some of that happens organically from the community. So like the Powwow Mural Festival, they've done over 125 murals now in the last 5 years.
Really impressive art too.
Yeah. And that really came out of just kind of the energy from the grassroots energy from the artists in the community, the creatives in the community. And so there might have a need for certain support from the city at times. And we've had Che Anderson in the city manager's office and the cultural development division has played an important role in that as well. But a lot of that came right out of the community on that. So again, placing the importance on different other cultural institutions. You look at the Hanover Theater as a critical asset downtown. They celebrated their 10-year anniversary. They bring in about 200,000 visitors to the downtown annually. And then some of the longer institutions, Worcester Art Museum, Ecotarium, providing that important kind of amenity and some of the programs for families in the area and youth. Even if you look at what's happening in the Printers Building too, the Wade family and what they've done with that building, there's all sorts of different organizations in there,
great.
and it's really a cool thing to see. So, I think we recognize the role of kind of the people as well as it relates to economic development, and we try to highlight, Worcester's history, its diversity, its culture, and you see that with a lot of the different cultural festivals that happen every year, whether it's the Latin American Festival or the Caribbean American Festival. So I think all those things working together are important to continue economic development.
And just thinking about, where we're at, like we were mentioning earlier, I don't think anyone imagined we'd be here this quickly. I mean, we have great economic growth. We have, in our business, we see a lot of real estate trading at prices we never thought possible, or we thought we didn't realize the valuations would rise so quickly. We have a ballpark. We're highlighting and embracing Worcester's history and culture. So there's a lot of different great facets going on all at the same time and kind of meshing well together. If there's one thing, whether it's a low-hanging fruit or a big ticket item that we haven't yet achieved, what would you say that is?
I think we can always do more around jobs. So it's not to say that we don't have job creation over the last 5, 10, 20 years. But I think continuing to try to attract employers, good paying jobs, livable wage jobs, and providing those opportunities for the people that are now living here. We've seen great development on the residential side of the equation, but we also don't want to just be a bedroom community for Boston. It's nice to have the commuter rail, and more work is doing to improve that connection between Worcester and Boston. But for the folks that do live here, we want to make sure that there are jobs available for them here as well. And so I think just continuing to try to attract those employers and help with filling some office space. There's a couple of, certainly with the ballpark, there's 2 office buildings proposed there with the acquisition of the glass tower downtown. Hoping to see some additional employers coming in. And I think that'll also help with the earlier topic about college student retention. So, some of those college students might be looking for that kind of household name in terms of a firm, whether it's financial services or other sectors. I think continuing to just try to create as many jobs as possible is going to be a particular focus moving forward.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, so you've been at City Hall for 7 years. If we gave you a crystal ball, and I asked you where do you think we'll be 7 years from now, what would you say?
That's a tough one. I think what's interesting about Worcester, and it kind of speaks to our history too. Worcester was always a place of ideas and innovations and inventions and things like that too. So I think as we go into this 21st century economy, I think we'll have some interesting new developments and hopefully companies and growth around sustainability initiatives. The city has kind of been a leader in that, where you look at the old Greenwood Street landfill. We now have the largest municipally owned solar array in New England, replacing all of the streetlights with LED, and a variety of other sustainability initiatives. I think the city, from the public sector perspective, is making that a priority, and I think we'll see the private sector fuel that growth as well. And when you look at the engineers that are coming out of WPI, or some of the cool stuff that's happening on Becker College with the digital games and simulation technology and things like that, whether it's augmented reality, virtual reality, I think we have the right ingredients to be an innovator into the 21st century as well.
I would agree, and we say it often around the office. We say it often with our clients. It's the most exciting time ever to be in Worcester, and a lot of that is due to obviously the success of the business community in the city, but also to you and your colleagues at City Hall, and we're very appreciative of your efforts.
Well, it's definitely a team effort, that's for sure. So a lot of sectors, a lot of people working together. It's definitely not any one organization or one institution, so hopefully we can continue that.
Absolutely. And I'm also appreciative of you making the time for us today, Peter.
Of course.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. That'll do it for now. Until next time, take care.